welcome to this, and as the title says, this is my review for TNA's No Surrender pay-per-view. Yay, wonderful. Not so much. This was much like Breaking Point, kind of forgettable. It was okay, best I'll say. There was some good stuff on here, particularly the announcing. Wow. You know, I've always been hard on TNA when it comes to this sort of thing. It was very refreshing to hear Mike Tenay and Taz just kind of having fun, sounding like they're having fun. It made me feel like I actually wanted to listen to the commentary, which is something I don't always want to do when I'm listening to TNA. But definitely they have gotten better, and Taz, I think, finally has gotten over the whole, you know, he's not going to have someone screaming at him in his ear, something he even made a comment about. So there was that, and then we had the pay-per-view itself, which, we will run down this little card here. We had the Beautiful People taking on Sarita and Miss Wilde. The Beautiful People, of course, being not being Angelina Love, as they explained. They basically said that they future endeavored her on television, which was kind of funny. And so there was that, and so, you know, it was okay. I mean, the Beautiful People it just didn't even feel the same. It was kind of strange that they still did kind of like this little dancing number when they came out, as did the Faces. The match was okay. It just seemed to stop out of nowhere, which was just kind of like, to me. You know, the Beautiful People don't have a worker now, and that kind of hurts the whole gimmick. So, but we'll see. Maybe they can make something out of it. But we now have TNA Knockout Tag Team Champions, which, if you're going to do that, that's fine, but you're going to have to bring in some more women. That's the whole thing. Then we had Eric Young versus Hernandez. Eric Young cut a promo basically saying he wouldn't fight Hernandez. So Hernandez came out, basically destroyed him. I'm kind of shocked, because why do people think that having a squash, when it's a good squash, which is what this was, is a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. A good squash is okay, so I gave this a 1/4 of a star, only because, you know, it wasn't horrid, it was fun, and you're meant to be entertained, and you can be entertained by a squash match, and that's what this did. Then we had Samoa Joe versus Daniels, which was, of course, a match most people were looking forward to. They definitely did not have their chemistry from a couple years ago. I would say a lot of that has to do with Joe has changed his style a bit. That, and of course, he doesn't have the same knees anymore, doesn't have the same back, and has more weight on him, and is overweight even for him, I would say. I definitely think, you know, TNA could live, because they're not, you know, Joe's not being used prominently at the moment. You know, even over the last 3 months, I would say, they could have easily sent him home. They could have sent him home after Slammiversary, basically said, okay, we're going to have you give the title to Angle, and then we're going to send you home, so no one knows why you did it. I think that would have been better in hindsight, because Joe, you can definitely tell Joe needs, like, lots of time off to rest his back, to rest his knees, so that he can lose, I would say, a good 15 pounds. That's not saying he's fat, it's just, I think he needs to lose the weight just because I think it would be better for him. You know, because he's definitely not the same. I mean, he still has the heart, he still is talented, he's still all of those things, and that's not to say that the match suffered because of that, because I don't think Christopher Daniels, since he came back as Daniels, has set necessarily the world on fire either. Not saying that he's bad, but I think he's been good. I think he's been, you know, what I would say TNA's version of Christian in some ways. So that, but the match was good. It wasn't stellar. It wasn't breakout marvelous. I gave it 3 1/4 stars. There was some good wrestling, but there just didn't seem to be much else to it other than them just having a good wrestling match. Then a match added at the last moment, because there wasn't apparently enough matches added to this card. Suicide versus the Pope. This was kind of good. It was entertaining. It went a little too long. They made it a Falls Count Anywhere match, so they went to the back. They used Plunder. It was, you know, they did some spots, which just seemed like spots and wasn't all that great. You know, but it went for a while. It was entertaining. To me personally, I think you could put both of these guys in the middle of the ring. And why would you have their? I think this is their first match, unless they've had a match one-on-one against each other on Impact that I'm not remembering. Why would you have their first match be a Falls Count Anywhere match? Why wouldn't you have their first match just be a match and just let them go out there? Both of these guys could have put on a good match, and you would have had 2 good wrestling matches as opposed to the gimmick matches you had. This pay-per-view was full of gimmick matches, so there was that too. Then we had Cody Deaner versus ODB. Dear Lord, this was so much better than it had any right in the history of being. This was entertaining. I'm giving it 2 3/4 stars, the same as the match before it, only because it was entertaining. I think the Falls Count Anywhere match was almost good, but it was just kind of there in a lot of ways. This was not a great match as far as what was taking place in the ring, but it was entertaining. It was funny. It was a pretty good comedy match, which is not something you normally see. Usually when we see comedy matches now, they're fairly horrible. That was not the case here. It worked. So there is that. Then we had Kevin Nash versus Abyss. This did not work. This was wretched. I gave it a star. You know, it brought back the smoking freaking taser gun. Give me a break. Go away. Whatever. Then we had a Lethal Lockdown. Why this was on this pay-per-view, for the life of me, I still don't know. It seemed very odd that this was on this pay-per-view because, Lethal Lockdown, that's their War Games type match. It's supposed to be, kind of the best guys for the most part in the match. And not that these guys aren't necessarily the best guys, but it's not your top guys. And you basically had, all your top tag teams in there. The match was good, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's kind of hard not to have a good Lethal Lockdown match, but it definitely wasn't, spectacular like you would hope a Lethal Lockdown match would be. There was definitely some slow points during the match, and it wasn't anything we hadn't seen before, so it was good, but not great. Then we had Bobby Lashley versus Rhino. This should have been a squash, to be completely honest. In my opinion, I thought that's what we would get. Instead, we had this long, drawn-out match. Bobby Lashley was never the best guy of carrying somebody, and to be honest, he was going to have to carry Rhino. Rhino was not what he once was at all, and even when Rhino was at his best, what he was the best at was having short, very high-impact matches, and that's not what we got here. I give it a star and a half. That might be being nice. This was kind of boring, and yeah. Then we had the main event, Kurt Angle versus Matt Morgan versus Sting versus AJ Styles with a surprise guest. Hernandez decided that it was time to cash in his briefcase, so he came in as well, which didn't really matter. He attacked Kurt Angle. They made him look like awesome. They made you think he was going to win the match. He did a standing vertical suplex with Kurt Angle that it must have been at least 30 seconds, I would say, which was a pretty awesome sight. Him and Kurt Angle fought to the back, to the ramp, and then Eric Young came out and pile drived Hernandez on the steps or on the ramp, and Hernandez was gone. No more Hernandez for the rest of the match, and then we got the rest of the match, and the match was just kind of there. Even though I know a lot of people are excited because AJ Styles won. I'm glad AJ won. I think it's about a year too late. I think last year was the year he should have won. When he was coming off that really hot angle with Kurt Angle, in which he was very over. He was one of the top guys. Not that he's not one of the top guys now, but it just amazes me that TNA does stuff like this. So there was that. I know a lot of people were excited. They made it look like a big freaking win. My whole point is, if Kurt Angle wasn't going to be the title, and I know people are going to bitch about me saying this, but it's true. If Kurt Angle was not going to be the champion going into Bound for Glory to start with, would it really been so hard to take the title off of him at the last pay-per-view? Really? I mean, would it really thrown a wrench into your plans that much? I mean, you still could have what it looks like it's going to be Sting versus AJ, career versus title, with everything else kind of thrown in. You still could have done that, I would imagine. You could have had Hernandez beat AJ and then AJ beat Hernandez on Impact if you wanted. There's ways around this. So there is that. The match was pretty good, but it was kind of just there. I gave this a 6.25. I really wasn't into this pay-per-view at all. And, you know, and when I was chatting, because I'm usually chatting with people when I'm watching pay-per-views, we started with 9 people. We ended up having, of those 9 people, only 3 of us, only 3 of us stayed. So 6 people dropped. And then we had someone else who is a diehard TNA fan who joined us at one point, said that he stopped watching it, and that's why he joined us, because he had stopped watching the pay-per-view. And he's a TNA diehard. We had 2 guys that come on here and defend TNA. Won't say who they are, but they do come on here and they do defend TNA from time to time. And they were bored crap out of this pay-per-view. Not that anything was totally horrid on the pay-per-view. There was horrid stuff on here. But it was just kind of there. There was just nothing to it. It just felt dead. And on top of that, you really didn't give anyone anything to get excited about. So there is that. And for those of you not aware, this is also apparently backstage helping out Vince Russo on this pay-per-view with Ed Ferrero. If you don't know who that is, that was Vince Russo's little buddy that followed him to WCW when Vince Russo left, and is better known as Oklahoma. Yes, he is now joining him. Don't know if that's going to be good. Don't know if that's going to be bad. We have to wait and see. I'm not too thrilled about it. Most of the people that have been around, most of the people that have been around wrestling for a while, particularly during Monday Night Wars, definitely were kind of like, really? But we'll wait and see. Like I said, overall, 6.25. Again, hopefully if Dixie Carter told the truth, and as soon as their pay-per-view contracts are out, they'll stop doing all these pay-per-views. Because it's evident that they just can't do this many pay-per-views. Because they have these, just who cares pay-per-views. They just are there. So, anyways, there is that. So anyways, that's my review. With that, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.